More than 30 million Americans live with chronic lung conditions, and veterans are especially at risk. Today, we're going to discuss respiratory conditions that are common in veterans, how the VA rates these conditions, and how you may qualify for compensation. I'm Tricia Dudlow McCracken, a VA disability attorney with Woods & Woods. Our VA disability law firm has helped thousands of veterans with their VA claims and appeals. Inhaling Agent Orange, smoke from burn pits, jet fuel, and other harmful substances can take a serious toll on your lungs. Many veterans who were exposed to these and other toxins during service now have to deal with lasting respiratory issues that impact their daily lives. If your military service left you with a respiratory condition that makes it hard to work or enjoy hobbies you used to love, you may be entitled to VA benefits. There are a lot of ways you may have been exposed to toxins in the air during service. Maybe you were stationed near burn pits or breathed in dust and sand while deployed in the Middle East. Maybe you have also been exposed to mechanical fumes while working around aircraft and heavy machinery. Whatever the case, the reality is simple. The more you're exposed to these hazards, the greater your risk of developing a chronic respiratory condition. The VA rates these conditions using the schedule of ratings for the respiratory system. Unlike some of the other body systems, there isn't a universal rating schedule for respiratory conditions. Because many of these conditions share symptoms, the VA generally assigns one combined rating instead of allowing double dipping, which is called pyramiding. In these cases, your rating will reflect either your predominant disability or whichever condition qualifies for the higher rating. Additionally, you may notice that some conditions can be rated as low as 0%. That doesn't mean it isn't worth pursuing service connection. Many of the conditions we'll discuss today can worsen over time or lead to more severe problems. Seeking service connection early can help you later on. Asthma is an inflammatory disease that causes your airways to swell and fill with mucus, making it difficult to breathe. It's often triggered by exercise or inhaling certain irritants. Most of the time, asthma develops in adolescence, but not always. It can be genetic, caused by hormonal changes, or as a result of other conditions. It can also be linked to toxic exposures. Research suggests that Gulf War veterans are more likely than civilians to develop asthma as adults. Breathing in fine particulate matter or smoke from burn pits may contribute to the onset of asthma. One study of 460,000 veterans found that veterans' chances of developing asthma increased for every 100 days they spent near a burn pit. Fortunately, asthma is one of 30 conditions eligible for presumptive service connection under the PACT Act for veterans exposed to burn pits. This means qualifying veterans do not need to prove a medical nexus between their asthma and their service to be eligible for compensation. However, you may still be able to connect asthma to service even if you weren't exposed to burn pits. In this case, you will need to provide a medical nexus. It may also be beneficial for you to seek service connection for asthma even if you believe your rating will be low, because it could be the key to connecting future conditions to service. This is because many conditions like sleep apnea and GERD can be secondary to asthma. Veterans can receive a secondary service-connected disability rating for any health condition that is medically related to a condition that's already service-connected. To learn more about how to service-connect asthma, check out our blog post in the description below. The VA rates asthma using diagnostic code 6602 in the schedule of ratings. Veterans with asthma may be eligible for a VA rating of 10, 30, 60, or 100%, depending on the severity of the illness and frequency of symptoms. To determine an appropriate rating, the VA typically requires a pulmonary function test to measure lung performance. The test measures the volume of air you can breathe out and how long it takes for you to exhale completely. If you aren't experiencing weakened lung function and symptoms of asthma at the time of the test, the VA will instead assign a rating based on your history of asthma attacks and the type of treatment you need. Almost everyone deals with irritating symptoms like a runny nose, congestion, and itchy eyes from time to time. But when these symptoms won't go away and you're constantly reaching for tissues or avoiding the outdoors because of allergies, you may have chronic rhinitis or sinusitis. Rhinitis is the medical term for inflammation of the inner lining of the nose. It becomes chronic when it lasts longer than 12 weeks. Sinusitis occurs when the sinuses swell or become inflamed. As is the case with many respiratory conditions, veterans are at a higher risk of developing chronic rhinitis or sinusitis if they smoke or have been exposed to airborne toxins through things like burn pits, smog, or chemical fumes. Like asthma and most of the other conditions we'll talk about in this video, the VA considers both rhinitis and sinusitis presumptive to burn pit exposure. However, burn pit exposure is not the only service-related cause of these conditions. You may be able to prove a connection between your diagnosis and other toxins you were exposed to during service, especially if your symptoms began before you were discharged. Rhinitis and sinusitis may also be secondary to another service-connected condition. Thyroid conditions and GERD may also lead to rhinitis or make it worse, while certain autoimmune and inflammatory diseases can cause or worsen sinusitis. Additionally, you may develop one or both of these conditions if you experience trauma to the nose or face that caused a deviated septum. The VA rates rhinitis using diagnostic code 6522 in the schedule of ratings. You may receive a rating of 10 or 30% depending on the level of obstruction and whether you develop nasal polyps. Chronic sinusitis is listed under diagnostic codes 6510 through 6414, all of which are rated using the general rating formula for sinusitis. Potential disability ratings are 0, 10, 30, and 50%. The VA rates sinusitis based on the severity of your symptoms, the amount of medication you need to control your symptoms, and the number of incapacitating episodes you experience each year. The VA defines an incapacitating episode as one that requires bed rest and medical treatment. To learn more about rhinitis or sinusitis, click the links in the description box below. Constrictive bronchiolitis is a rare respiratory condition that affects the smallest airways in your lungs, causing them to become inflamed and damaged, eventually leaving them scarred. This form of lung damage is primarily caused by exposure to certain occupational hazards. In fact, the condition got its nickname popcorn lung because it was first discovered in the lungs of workers at a popcorn factory. The workers developed constrictive bronchiolitis from inhaling chemicals used to make the popcorn taste buttery. But artificial flavoring is of course not the only known cause of the disease. Exposure to inhaled toxins like mustard gas and nitrogen oxides can also increase your risk of developing constrictive bronchiolitis. Because of its connection to airborne toxins, qualifying veterans with constrictive bronchiolitis who were exposed to burn pits during service are eligible for a presumptive service connection. Additionally, the disease can sometimes develop as a complication of another service-connected condition, meaning you may be able to service-connect it on a secondary basis. Some conditions that may lead to constrictive bronchiolitis include certain types of infections, pneumonia, bronchitis, and rheumatoid arthritis. Finally, veterans who developed constrictive bronchiolitis because of a service-related lung transplant may be able to connect it as a residual condition or a condition caused as a side effect of treating another condition. For now, constrictive bronchiolitis doesn't have its own diagnostic code. The VA uses analogous ratings or ratings for similar conditions to make a determination. Constrictive bronchiolitis is rated analogously using diagnostic codes 6600 through 6604 for diseases of trachea and bronchi. The VA has proposed assigning a diagnostic code for constrictive bronchiolitis, but there's currently no timeline for when this may happen. We will update the description box if a new rule goes into effect, so make sure to check back for updates. The VA will assign a rating of 10, 30, 60, or 100% depending on the results of a pulmonary function test. To learn more, click the links in the description below. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, is a lung condition that causes inflammation that makes it hard to breathe. The two most common types of COPD are emphysema and chronic bronchitis. Emphysema develops when there is damage to the walls between the lungs' air sacs, which reduces the lungs' elasticity. Chronic bronchitis is inflammation in the lining of the airways. Smoking is the biggest risk factor for COPD. It can also develop as the result of frequent exposure to harmful irritants like chemical fumes, vapors, dust, and other occupational hazards. Many veterans are especially at risk for developing COPD due to exposures during military service, including smoke from burn pits, Agent Orange, and mustard gas. COPD is another respiratory condition recognized by the VA as presumptive of burn pit exposure. Even though herbicides are associated with COPD, it is not considered presumptive of Agent Orange exposure. But if you believe Agent Orange or any other toxic exposure caused your COPD, with enough evidence, you may be able to prove it. You may also be able to connect COPD as secondary to asthma. Asthma may lead to chronic bronchitis because the narrowing of the airways can sometimes cause excess mucus production. COPD can also lead to a host of different health problems, including sleep apnea, lung nodules, pulmonary hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, and mental health conditions. In fact, according to one study, depression has been diagnosed in approximately 40% of COPD patients. The combination of these and other related conditions with a COPD rating could drastically increase your overall combined rating or contribute to TDIU. The VA rates COPD under diagnostic code 6604 in the Schedule of Ratings. You may receive a VA rating for COPD of 10, 30, 60, or 100% depending on the results of your pulmonary function test. Sarcoidosis is an inflammatory disease that can affect any part of the body, but most often affects the lungs. This condition is commonly associated with military service, particularly among veterans exposed to burn pits. The exact cause of sarcoidosis is unclear, but researchers believe there are both genetic and environmental factors at play. Some of the known environmental risk factors for sarcoidosis include living or working near insecticides or in dusty or moldy environments, and you guessed it, exposure to burn pits during military deployments. Luckily, sarcoidosis is included in the VA's list of conditions presumptive to burn pit exposure. Regardless of burn pit exposure, veterans in general are at a higher risk of developing sarcoidosis. In a study of the condition among veterans and non-veterans, the veteran population had 4 to 5 times higher annual incidence rates of new sarcoidosis cases compared to non-veterans. Sarcoidosis of the lungs is rated under diagnostic code 6846 and can be rated at 0, 30, 60, or 100% depending on the severity of the veteran's symptoms. Pulmonary fibrosis, also known as interstitial lung disease, occurs when the tissue around the lungs' air sacs becomes scarred and thick. This can reduce the flow of oxygen through the bloodstream, causing breathlessness that make daily tasks and work extremely challenging. Causes of pulmonary fibrosis include environmental pollutants like asbestos, certain medicines, connective tissue diseases, and certain autoimmune disorders like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and other respiratory diseases. Veterans exposed to burn pits or other toxins during their military service may be more prone to developing pulmonary fibrosis. This is why pulmonary fibrosis is a presumptive condition for burn pit exposure. But like the other conditions we've talked about today, there are other ways to connect pulmonary fibrosis to service. For example, veterans may be able to prove a connection between their diagnosis and certain toxic exposures like asbestos or mold. Additionally, if the veteran was diagnosed with a service-related condition that might have caused the fibrosis, it can be connected on a secondary basis. The VA rates pulmonary fibrosis under the general rating formula for interstitial lung disease, or diagnostic codes 6825 through 6833. It can be assigned a rating of 10, 30, 60, or 100%. As is the case with most respiratory conditions, the VA will likely have you complete a pulmonary function test to measure how severe your condition is. Cancer can affect anyone, but studies show that the veteran population is at a slightly higher risk of developing cancer than the general population. This is often due to toxic exposure during service. All types of lung cancer are considered presumptive to burn pit, ionizing radiation, and Agent Orange exposure. The VA rates lung cancer using diagnostic code 6819 in the Schedule of Ratings for malignant neoplasms of the respiratory system. This rating provides a 100% disability rating for the duration of the illness and treatment and for 6 months after treatment. After 6 months, you will be required to complete another VA exam to determine if there are residual issues. At that point, you will receive a new rating based on any residuals. We have a video about how the VA rates cancer. It is linked in the description box if you'd like to learn more. If you've been diagnosed with a service-connected respiratory condition, you may find it hard to maintain a full-time job. These conditions often cause breathing difficulties, chest pain, and coughing fits that make it hard to stay on task at a sedentary job and may make physical labor nearly impossible. If this sounds like you may be eligible for total disability based on individual unemployability, or TDIU. TDIU benefits are awarded to veterans who can't maintain substantially gainful employment due to their service-connected conditions. Veterans who receive TDIU benefits are compensated at the same level as those with a 100% disability rating, even though their combined rating is below 100%. If you think your COPD, asthma, or any other respiratory condition is making it hard for you to work, please call us. We may be able to help you build a case. This video was an overview of some common respiratory disorders that may be service-connected. To learn more about VA benefits for specific respiratory conditions, follow the links to our blog in the description below. If you have more questions about VA benefits in general, please check out the other videos on our channel. You can also leave questions in the comment section below, and a member of our staff will answer or connect you with someone who can. If you're wondering if you qualify for an increased rating or TDIU, contact Woods & Woods for a free consultation. Click on the contact page in the description below or call us at the number on your screen.